The sun has set over the thatched roof of your cottage, and the only light comes from the dying embers in the hearth. You do not lay down for a solid 8 hours of rest like you do in the modern world. Instead, you settle into your straw mattress for what everyone calls the first sleep. Around midnight, your eyes snap open. The house is quiet, but you are wide awake. You might spend the next hour praying, whispering to your spouse, or even visiting a neighbor. This is the watch, a strange gap of consciousness in the middle of the night before you drift back into your second sleep. In the medieval world, the night is not a single block of darkness, but a journey taken in 2 distinct parts. Welcome to a time when the way you dream is about to change forever. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the world as it exists today. It is a world of constant, humming electricity. Even in the dead of night, you can look out your window and see the soft amber glow of streetlights, the blinking red beacons on top of distant towers, or the blue shimmer of a television screen reflecting off a neighbor's curtain. We live in a world where the sun never truly sets on our productivity or our entertainment. Because of this, we have a very specific, almost dogmatic idea of what sleep is supposed to be. We are told, from the time we are children, that a good night of rest consists of 8 solid, uninterrupted hours. You go to bed at 10 or 11, you close your eyes, you lose consciousness, and you do not open them again until the sun or the alarm clock demands it. We view any break in that cycle as a problem, a medical condition called insomnia that needs to be cured. But now I want you to strip all of that away. Take away the light bulbs. Take away the glowing screens. Take away the hum of the refrigerator and the distant roar of the highway. Imagine that you are standing in a small village in the year 1350. The sun is just beginning to dip below the horizon, and as it does, the world you know is being swallowed by a darkness so profound and so heavy that you can almost feel it pressing against your skin. This is the beginning of the medieval night, and your relationship with sleep is about to become something entirely different from anything you have ever experienced. You stand at the edge of a dirt path. The air is cooling rapidly, smelling of damp earth, with smoke, and the heavy, musky scent of livestock. To your left, you see the silhouette of a small timber-framed house with a thatched roof. There are no windows of glass, only small openings covered by heavy wooden shutters or perhaps a piece of oiled cloth. As the last sliver of the sun vanishes, the colors of the world drain away into shades of gray and charcoal. In this world, when the sun goes down, the day is truly over. There is no overtime. There is no late-night grocery shopping. There is only the coming of the deep, impenetrable black. You step inside the house. The interior is cramped and thick with the haze of a dying fire. The only light comes from the glowing embers of the hearth in the center of the room. You can barely see your own hands in front of your face. To have more light than this would require candles made of tallow, which is rendered animal fat. They are expensive, they smell like burning meat, and they flicker and sputter, casting long, dancing shadows that seem to pull at the corners of the room. Most people cannot afford to burn them for long. For the medieval peasant, and even for many of the nobility, the end of the light is a command from nature itself to retreat. You find your bed. It is not the soft, king-sized mattress of the 21st century. It is a wooden frame, or perhaps just a pallet on the floor, stuffed with straw or dried heather. It is lumpy, it is rustling, and it is likely shared. You are not sleeping alone. You are tucked in beside your spouse, your children, and perhaps even a traveling guest or a servant. In the corner of the room, you hear the heavy breathing of a cow or the rustle of chickens. The warmth of other bodies is your only protection against the creeping chill of the night air. As you settle in, You are about to participate in a ritual that has existed for thousands of years, a ritual that the modern world has entirely forgotten. You are not preparing for 8 hours of sleep. You are preparing for your first sleep. In the medieval world, sleep was not a single monolithic block. It was a journey in 2 parts. Historians and scientists now call this biphasic sleep, but to you, living in this moment, it is simply the way of the world. You close your eyes as the village falls silent, save for the occasional bark of a dog or the hoot of an owl. Within minutes, you drift off. This first sleep is deep, heavy, and restorative. It is the sleep of a body that has spent the day tilling fields, hauling water, and laboring under the sun. Your mind descends into a dark well of unconsciousness. But then, something strange happens. Around midnight or 1 in the morning, without the help of an alarm or a ticking clock, your eyes snap open. You are not tired. You do not feel the groggy, panic sensation of having been woken up too early. Instead, you feel calm, alert, and strangely peaceful. This is the interval. This is what the medieval world called the watch. In our modern era, if you woke up at 2 in the morning and felt wide awake, you would probably feel a surge of anxiety. You would look at the clock and calculate how many hours you have left before work. You might toss and turn, frustrated that your body is failing to do its job. But in the medieval period, this waking period was considered the most precious time of the day. You sit up in the darkness. The fire has burned down to a dull red pulse of heat. Beside you, your family members are also stirring. This is not a time of loneliness. It is a time of quiet, intimate activity. You might strike a small light and use this hour to perform chores that require little movement. Perhaps you mend a tear in a tunic by the dim light of the embers. Perhaps you pray. For many, this was the most spiritual time of the 24-hour cycle. The world is silent. The distractions of the day are gone. And it feels as though the veil between the earthly and the divine is at its thinnest. You might recite your psalms or meditate on the state of your soul. For others, the watch was a social time. You might slip out of bed and walk to a neighbor's house. You would see the faint glow of fires through their shutters, and you would knock softly. You might sit together and talk about the gossip of the village, the coming harvest, or the stories of your ancestors. There was a unique quality to these conversations. They were deeper, more reflective, and more honest than the hurried talk of the daylight hours. Doctors of the time even believed that this interval was the best time for study or for the conception of children. They argued that after the first sleep, the body had digested its evening meal and the blood was rested and pure. It was a time of peak human vitality, tucked away in the middle of the night. You spend an hour, maybe 2, in this state of gentle wakefulness. You feel a profound sense of connection to the world around you, a world that is breathing and dreaming in the dark. Then, as naturally as you woke up, you begin to feel the pull of the second sleep. It is a different kind of tiredness, a soft, heavy blanket that settles over your shoulders. You lay back down on the straw mattress. The second sleep begins. This second sleep is often lighter, filled with vivid, swirling dreams. It lasts until the first hints of gray light begin to bleed through the thatch or the morning bell of the local monastery rings out across the fields. When you finally rise for the day, you have not had 8 hours of sleep. You have had 2 chunks of 4 hours, separated by a bridge of consciousness, and you feel completely refreshed. The idea that we must sleep in one continuous block is a relatively new invention. It is a product of the Industrial Revolution, the factory whistle, and the invention of the light bulb. When we brought artificial light into our homes, we pushed back the darkness. We stayed up later and later, squeezing that midnight interval until it disappeared entirely. We forced our bodies to compress all of that rest into one single session to fit the schedule of the machine. But as you stand there in your medieval hut, watching the stars through a gap in the door, you realize that the 8-hour night is a myth. It is a cage that we have built for ourselves. In this older world, the night was not just a gap between days. It was a landscape of its own, with its own rhythms, its own tasks, and its own special kind of light. The myth of the 8-hour night suggests that humans have always slept the way we do now, but the records of the past tell a different story. Legal depositions from the Middle Ages mention people getting up to do things in the night as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Old medical manuals and prayer books are filled with references to the first and second sleep. It was the universal human experience, shared by the king in his castle and the serf in his hovel. You lie back down for that second sleep, listening to the gentle rhythm of the breathing around you. You are beginning to understand that to know the medieval person, you have to understand how they inhabited the dark. You have to understand that for them, the night was not a void, but a vibrant, living part of their existence. As we move forward into the heart of the medieval night, we will see that this sleep pattern was only the beginning. The bed itself, the way people dressed for sleep, and the terrifying things they believed waited for them in the shadows would shape their entire culture. But it all starts here with the breaking of the myth and the acceptance of the two sleeps. The sun has set, the first sleep is ending, and the watch is about to begin. Welcome to the true medieval night. Imagine yourself standing on a small, dirt-packed path that winds its way through a village in the middle of the 14th century. It is late autumn, and the air has a sharp, biting edge to it. You look up and see the sun beginning its slow, heavy descent toward the horizon. In your modern life, this would be the time you start thinking about what to have for dinner, or perhaps you would be finishing up a late meeting under the steady, humorless glow of LED office lights. But here, in this world, the sun is not just a celestial body or a source of vitamin D. It is your master. It is the absolute sovereign that dictates every single motion of your life, especially your sleep. As the gold of the afternoon turns into the bruised purple of twilight, you feel a shift in the very atmosphere of the village. There is no such thing as a night shift here. There is no staying late at the office. When the sun goes down, the world essentially shuts down. You watch as your neighbors, men and women with dirt under their fingernails and backs aching from the harvest, begin to retreat toward their homes. The rhythm of their footsteps is hurried. They are racing against the fading light because they know that once the sun disappears, the world becomes a very different, and often very dangerous, place. You follow them into one of the small, timber-framed houses. There are no light switches here. There are no lamps to click on. As you step inside, the interior is already swallowed by deep, velvety shadows. To understand how these people slept, you first have to understand the sheer, oppressive weight of their darkness. For us, darkness is a choice we make by closing our eyes or drawing the curtains. For you, in this medieval cottage, darkness is an environmental reality that you cannot escape. Your host reaches for a small, thin object sitting on a wooden stool. It is a rushlight. To make this, they have taken a common meadow rush, peeled back the skin to reveal the pith, and dipped it into leftover animal fat or mutton tallow. It is cheap, it is smelly, and as they light it, you realize it provides about as much illumination as a single modern match. It flickers violently in the drafty room, casting long, dancing shadows against the wattle and daub walls. If they were wealthy, they might have a beeswax candle, which burns clean and smells of honey. But beeswax is a luxury reserved for the church and the nobility. For the common person, the smell of the evening is the smell of burning fat. This meager light is all you have to guide you through your evening chores. Because light is so expensive and so difficult to maintain, you do not spend your evenings reading or working on hobbies. You spend them preparing to succumb to the dark. You see the family gathered around the central hearth. The fire is the heart of the home, providing the only real warmth and the only steady source of light. But even the fire is subject to the rules of the sun and the law of the land. Suddenly, from the distance, you hear the heavy, metallic tolling of a bell. This is the curfew bell. The word curfew itself comes from the French phrase couvre-feu, which literally means cover fire. In a world where houses are built of wood and straw, an untended flame in the middle of the night is a death sentence for an entire street. When that bell rings, it is a signal from the local authorities that it is time to dampen your hearth and prepare for rest. You watch as the father of the house uses a metal lid or a pile of ash to cover the glowing embers. The room plunges into a darkness so thick you can almost feel it against your skin. In this moment, you realize that your internal clock is perfectly synchronized with the world outside. Without the interference of blue light from screens or the steady glow of street lamps, your brain is already flooding your system with melatonin. You are tired in a way that feels ancient and biological. You are not fighting your body to stay awake for one more episode of a show or to scroll through a feed. You are yielding to the natural order. But time itself feels different here. We are used to a world of fixed, 60-minute hours that are the same in December as they are in June. In the medieval mind, time is flexible. They use what are often called temporal or unequal hours. In the summer, when the sun stays high in the sky for a long time, the hours of the day are long and the hours of the night are short. In the winter, the reverse is true. Your sleep habits expand and contract like a lung, breathing in the long nights of winter and shortening during the frantic, light-filled days of summer labor. You find yourself moving toward the sleeping area. In this house, there are no separate bedrooms for everyone. Space is a premium, and warmth is even more valuable. You will be sharing a bed or a large pile of straw-filled ticking with several other people. Perhaps it is the entire family, or perhaps even a traveler who has been granted a spot for the night. This communal sleeping is not seen as strange or an invasion of privacy. It is a practical necessity. The heat of other human bodies is your primary defense against the creeping chill of the night air. As you lie down, the straw beneath you rustles and crunches. It is not the silent memory foam experience you are used to. You can hear the breathing of the people next to you. You can hear the scurrying of small rodents in the thatch above and the occasional shift of a cow or a pig in the adjacent section of the house. For many medieval peasants, the livestock lives under the same roof, separated only by a low partition. The warmth of the animals rises and mixes with the scent of the wood smoke and the tallow. You are now living by solar sovereignty. The sun has dictated when you stopped working. The curfew bell dictated when you extinguished your fire, and now the absence of light dictates that you must close your eyes. There is a profound sense of security in this rhythm, but also a sense of isolation. Beyond the walls of this cottage, the woods and fields are a black void. Without the sun, the world outside has ceased to exist for you. This deep connection to the sun's path also means that medieval people are far more aware of the celestial movements than we are. You might not have a watch, but you know exactly where the moon is in its cycle. You know the position of the stars. These are your only clocks. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you might look through a small slit in the wall to see which constellations are overhead to gauge how much longer you have until the first light of dawn. You also begin to notice how the seasons radically change your relationship with sleep. In the height of summer, you might only sleep for 5 or 6 hours. The sun rises so early and sets so late that you must spend every available minute in the fields. You are chronically exhausted, but the sun demands your labor. In the winter, however, you might spend 14 hours in the dark. This does not mean you are sleeping for 14 hours straight, but you are confined to your bed for that entire time. It is during these long, cold winter nights that the medieval habit of broken sleep becomes most apparent, a topic we will explore as the night deepens. The psychological impact of this solar-driven life cannot be overstated. For you, the sun is a gift from the divine. Its rising is a daily miracle that rescues you from the terrors and the limitations of the night. You do not take the light for granted. Every candle stub is a treasure. Every moment of twilight is a transition between the world of the living and the world of dreams and shadows. As you drift off in this dark, crowded, and fragrant room, you realize that your modern life is an attempt to rebel against this very sovereignty. We have built a world that pretends the sun does not matter. We eat, work, and play at any hour we choose. But here, tucked into the straw as the last embers of the covered fire fade to gray, you are part of a much older story. You are a subject of the sun. Your heart beats to its rising, and your eyes close to its setting. You are finally experiencing the true weight of the medieval night, a night defined not by what you can do, but by what the sun will no longer allow. The silence of the village is total now. There are no distant sirens, no hum of a refrigerator, no white noise machine. There is only the wind in the thatch and the slow, rhythmic breathing of a household in total submission to the dark. This is the foundation of the medieval experience. Before the great cathedrals were built, before the wars were fought, and before the plague changed the world, there was simply the sun and the sleep it commanded. You are now fully immersed in that rhythm, waiting for the first gray light to break the sovereignty of the stars and call you back to the world of the waking. The sun has been gone for hours now. You have watched the twilight deepen from a bruised purple into a heavy, suffocating ink that seems to press against the very walls of your timber-framed home. Outside, the world has ceased its frantic movement. The blacksmith has long since dropped his hammer. The oxen are still in their pens, and the village streets are nothing but ribbons of mud and shadow. In this world, the setting of the sun is not merely a change in lighting. It is a hard boundary. It is the end of the known world and the beginning of a realm governed by silence and the flickering ghosts of the hearth fire. You are standing in the center of your one-room cottage, and your body feels the immense weight of the day. Every muscle in your back, strained by hours of hauling water or tilling the heavy clay soil, is screaming for the release that only the first sleep can provide. You move toward the hearth to perform the final and most important ritual of the evening. This is the curfew. The word itself comes from the French phrase meaning to cover the fire. You take a heavy ceramic lid or perhaps just a layer of damp ash and carefully bank the glowing embers. You do not want the fire to go out completely, for starting a new flame in the morning is a tedious task involving flint and steel that you would rather avoid. But you cannot leave it raging. A stray spark in a house filled with straw and dried wood is a death sentence. As you dampen the glow, the room plunges into a deeper gloom. The only light now comes from a single tallow candle, a foul-smelling thing made of rendered beef fat that gutters and spits, casting long, dancing shadows against the thatched ceiling. You turn toward your bed. In this time, the bed is not just a piece of furniture. It is the most valuable possession a family might own. Or perhaps it is nothing more than a pile of loose vegetation on the floor. If you are a common laborer, your bed is a palliasse. This is essentially a large sack made of coarse hemp or linen, stuffed to bursting with straw, chaff, or dried pea vines. You approach it and give it a vigorous shake. You are not just fluffing it for comfort. You are trying to discourage the unwelcome guests that live within the fibers. Fleas, lice, and the occasional mouse call the straw home just as much as you do. You have learned to live with the itching, the tiny bites that mark your skin like a map of the night, but for now you just want the surface to be level. You do not undress in the way a person from the future might expect. There are no silk pajamas or cotton nightshirts here. You strip down to your linen chemise or your braise, which are the simple undergarments that have sat against your skin all day. In the winter, you might not strip down at all. You keep your woolen tunic on, perhaps even your cloak, because the cold in a medieval winter is a physical entity that bites through the walls. You climb onto the straw, and the sound is a loud, dry rustling that seems to echo in the stillness. But you are not alone. As you settle in, you feel the weight of others shifting beside you. In the medieval world, the idea of a private bedroom is a luxury reserved for the highest nobility, and even then, it is rarely truly private. You are sharing this space. To your left is your spouse, and to your right are your children. On the far end of the bed, perhaps there is a traveling cousin or a farmhand who has no place else to go. You are all packed in together like spoons in a drawer. This is not seen as an intrusion of privacy. It is a matter of survival. The human body is the most reliable heater you possess. You feel the warmth of your family radiating through the thin layers of linen, a communal heat that wards off the damp chill creeping up from the dirt floor. Beyond the humans, there are other heartbeats in the room. In the corner, just a few feet from where you lay your head, the family cow shifts in her stall. You can hear her heavy, rhythmic breathing and the occasional thud of her tail against the wooden partition. The smell of the room is a thick, earthy soup of wood smoke, unwashed bodies, drying herbs, and livestock. To your modern nose, it might be overwhelming, but to you, the medieval sleeper, these are the smells of security. The presence of the animals means the wealth of the family is safe. The smell of the smoke means the house is dry. You pull a heavy coverlet over the group. It is made of thick, felted wool, itchy and coarse, but it is heavy enough to pin you to the mattress. You lie there for a moment, staring up into the darkness. This is the moment when the first sleep begins to take hold. Scientists in the future will call this the transition into non-rapid eye movement sleep, but you know it simply as the sinking. It is a profound, heavy descent, because you have worked from the first light of dawn until the last sliver of dusk. Your exhaustion is not mental or nervous. It is a deep physical depletion. The world outside begins to fade. The rustle of the straw beneath you becomes the sound of distant waves. The flickering light of the dying embers on the wall slows down, the shadows stretching and yawning. You are entering what medieval writers call the dead of the night. This first sleep is famously difficult to wake from. It is a period of intense, dreamless restoration. In this state, a house could catch fire or a storm could rattle the shutters, and you might not even stir. You are being claimed by the first phase of the medieval night. As you drift, your mind lets go of the anxieties of the day. You stop worrying about the grain tax, the rot in the timber, or the sickness in the neighboring village. Your brain chemistry is shifting. In the absence of artificial light, your pineal gland is flooding your system with melatonin in a way that people in the illuminated future will never truly experience. This is a natural chemical tidal wave. There is no blue light from a screen to trick your brain into thinking it is still daytime. There is only the absolute, uncompromising dark. In this darkness, the boundaries of your body seem to blur. You are no longer an individual struggling against the world. You are part of a huddle of humanity, a single breathing organism kept warm by shared breath and woolen blankets. The silence of the medieval night is not like the silence of a modern city. There is no hum of a refrigerator, no distant roar of a highway, no buzz of electricity in the walls. The silence is heavy and textured. You might hear the hoot of a tawny owl in the woods, a sound that the superstitious part of your mind whispers is a bad omen, but the heaviness of your limbs pulls you away from fear. You might hear the wind whistling through the thatch, a lonely, high-pitched reed sound, but it only makes the warmth of the bed feel more precious. You are now in the deepest part of the first slumber. This phase usually lasts for about 4 hours. It is the time when the body does its most vital repair work. Your heartbeat slows to a steady, low thrum. Your breathing deepens, syncing up unconsciously with the breathing of the people lying next to you. This is the first half of the great nocturnal bridge. In the medieval mind, sleep is a journey. You have left the shore of the waking world, and you are currently in the middle of the dark ocean. Think about the sheer density of this sleep. In a world without coffee, without refined sugar, and without the constant stimulation of rapid information, the nervous system is tuned to a different frequency. When the sun goes down, the body shuts down with a mechanical certainty. You are not tossing and turning. You are not thinking about your to-do list for tomorrow. You are simply being extinguished for a time. The first slumber is a small death, a temporary departure from the burdens of the flesh. But even in this deep, dead sleep, there is a subconscious clock ticking. Your body knows that this is not the end of the night. Unlike the people of the 21st century who try to compress all their rest into one solid block, your internal rhythms are prepared for the break. You are traveling toward a clearing in the forest of the night. In a few hours, the intensity of this first sleep will break. The chemical tide will recede just enough to pull you back toward the surface of consciousness. You will wake up, not because of an alarm or a sudden noise, but because your body has finished its first major task of recovery. But for now, the darkness is total. The hearth is a pile of graying ash with a secret heart of red. The cow has fallen silent in her stall. The village is a collection of silent mounds under a canopy of stars that look close enough to touch. You are submerged in the first slumber, drifting in the quiet center of the medieval night, waiting for the natural pause that will soon bring you back to a strange, midnight world of wakefulness. The heavy blankets press down, the straw cradles your tired bones, and the world of the sun is a distant, forgotten dream. You are exactly where you need to be, lost in the deep, restorative embrace of the dead of night. You open your eyes. The heavy, leaden feeling of deep exhaustion has vanished, replaced by a strange, crisp clarity. You are not being jolted awake by a loud noise or a sudden cold draft. Instead, your body has simply decided that its first task is complete. You have finished your first sleep. In the modern world, waking up at 2 in the morning is often a source of anxiety. You might roll over and groan, checking a glowing screen to see how many hours of rest you have left before the alarm clock screams you into reality. But here, in the heart of the Middle Ages, this moment is not a mistake. It is an appointment. This is the watch. You sit up slowly, the straw of your mattress rustling softly beneath you. The room is draped in layers of velvet shadow, illuminated only by the faint, pulsing orange glow of the embers in the hearth. The air is cool on your face, a sharp contrast to the warmth that still clings to your woolen blankets. You feel a sense of peace that is almost impossible to find in the sunlit hours. During the day, the world is a chaotic symphony of shouting merchants, clattering carts, and the endless demands of labor. But now the village is silent. The world is yours. This hour or two of wakefulness is a sacred space in the medieval calendar of the day. It is a bridge between two worlds of rest. To you and to everyone you know, this is the most productive and reflective time of the 24-hour cycle. Doctors and philosophers of your time suggest that this is when the brain is at its most balanced. The humors of the body have settled after the first round of digestion and rest. Your mind is no longer clouded by the frantic energy of the afternoon. It is sharpened, refined, and ready for whatever purpose you choose to give it. You might begin by attending to your soul. In an age where the divine is felt in every gust of wind and every rustle of the thatch, the midnight hour is when the veil between heaven and earth feels thinnest. You slide out of bed, your bare feet meeting the cold, packed earth of the floor. You do not need a candle to find your way to the small wooden crucifix hanging on the wall or the simple prayer bench by the window. You know this space by heart. You begin to recite the psalms you learned as a child. The words feel different in the dark. They are not just chores performed in a crowded church. They are a private conversation. The monks in the nearby abbey are doing the same. You can almost hear the faint, ghostly chime of their bells echoing across the fields, calling them to matins. They believe that while the rest of the world sleeps, they are the sentinels keeping watch over the spiritual health of the kingdom. But you do not have to be a monk to participate in this midnight vigil. You find yourself reflecting on your life, your sins, and your hopes for the coming harvest. This is the time for deep, unhurried thought. The worries that felt overwhelming at sunset now seem manageable, categorized by the quiet logic of the watch. Perhaps you are not alone in your wakefulness. Beside you, your spouse stirs and sits up as well. There is no need for loud greetings. You speak in low, rhythmic whispers. This is often the only time of the day when you can truly talk without the interruptions of children, neighbors, or the pressing needs of the farm. You discuss the small things that make up a life. You talk about the health of the cow, the leaking roof in the barn, or the way the youngest child is growing. These conversations are the glue that holds a household together. In the soft darkness, away from the prying eyes of the community, you share secrets and dreams that the daylight would feel too harsh to hold. But the watch is not only for prayer and intimacy. It is a time of immense physical and intellectual productivity. If you were a scholar or a scribe, this would be the hour you reach for your quill. You would trim the wick of a small tallow candle, watching the tiny flame dance and cast long, swaying shadows against the stone walls. In this isolation, the words flow onto the parchment with a fluidity that escapes you at noon. The great works of medieval philosophy and theology were often forged in these silent hours. The term burning the midnight oil is not a metaphor for you. It is a physical reality. You can feel the heat of the lamp on your knuckles as you labor to capture thoughts before they evaporate into the coming morning. If you are a craftsman, your watch might be spent at the workbench. A weaver might throw the shuttle a few more times, the rhythmic clack of the loom sounding like a heartbeat in the still house. A brewer might slip out to the shed to check on the fermenting vats, ensuring the yeast is working its magic in the cool night air. There is a specific kind of satisfaction in doing this work while the rest of the world remains under the covers. It feels like stolen time, an extra gift of hours that allows you to get ahead of the sun. Outside your door, the village is not as dead as a modern person might imagine. If you were to look out the window, you might see the flickering light of a lantern moving through a neighbor's yard. They are likely checking on the livestock. Animals do not follow the human schedule of 2 sleeps, but they do require attention. A farmer might walk through the stalls, whispering to the oxen, making sure they are fed and secure. The sheep in the fold might need a watchful eye to protect them from the wolves that still roam the edges of the forest. The night is a living thing, and you are one of its many caretakers. In the taverns of the larger towns, the watch is a much rowdier affair. While the pious pray and the diligent work, the restless gathered to drink ale and play cards. Even there, the mood is different than it was in the early evening. The frantic energy of the day has burned off, replaced by a low, simmering intensity. You might find travelers sharing stories of distant lands, their voices hushed as if they are afraid of waking the night itself. For the criminal element, this is the prime time for business. The watch is the hour of the thief and the cutpurse, who rely on the fact that most people are tucked away behind locked doors. This is why the town crier or the night watchman patrols the streets with a pike and a lantern. His heavy footsteps on the cobblestones are a comforting reminder that order is being maintained in the heart of the darkness. As you move through your own house, you might find yourself performing the small, mundane tasks that keep a home running. You might sweep the hearth, mend a torn tunic by the light of the embers, or prepare the dough for the morning's bread. These chores feel less like burdens and more like meditations. There is a profound sense of agency in the watch. In the daytime, you are a servant to the clock, the seasons, and your social betters. But in the middle of the night, you are the master of your own rhythm. You choose how to spend this time. Medical texts of your era emphasize the importance of this period for conception as well. It is believed that the body is at its peak of vitality during the interval between sleeps. For couples hoping for a child, the watch is considered the most auspicious time. It is a moment of creation in the midst of the world's stillness. Every aspect of medieval life, from the spiritual to the biological, is tailored to accommodate this break in the night. It is not a disruption. It is a feature of being human. As the minutes tick by, you begin to feel a familiar change in your body. The sharp, crystalline focus of the watch begins to soften around the edges. The clarity is replaced by a gentle, creeping warmth. The physical labor you have done or the mental energy you have expended has brought on a new kind of tiredness. It is not the bone-deep fatigue of the evening, but a peaceful invitation to return to the blankets. Your mind starts to drift, the thoughts of the future and the echoes of your prayers blending into a pleasant fog. You realize that the fire has burned down to glowing red coals that look like tiny cities of light in the grate. You bank the embers carefully, ensuring they will last until the morning when you will need them to start the day. You return to your bed, and the straw feels even softer than it did before. You slide back under the heavy wool, feeling the warmth left behind by your body earlier in the night. The world outside remains dark, but the quality of the darkness has changed. The deepest part of the night has passed. You have prayed, you have worked, you have talked, and you have reflected. You have lived an entire mini-life while the rest of the world was unaware. Now, you are ready for the final act of the nocturnal cycle. The second sleep is waiting for you, and it promises to be even deeper and more restorative than the first. You close your eyes, the silence of the room wrapping around you like a cocoon. You are drifting away now, leaving the world of the watch behind and sinking toward the dawn. You open your eyes and the world is thick with a silence so heavy it feels like a physical weight against your skin. The fire has settled into a bed of glowing orange eyes, casting long, dancing shadows across the timber beams of the ceiling. It is perhaps 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. In the modern world, this is the hour of the wolf, the time of frantic tossing and turning, and the desperate calculation of how many hours of sleep remain before the alarm screams you into consciousness. But here, in your medieval bed, there is no such panic. You are experiencing what your neighbors call dorval. The word itself comes from the old French words for sleep and wakefulness. It is a state of being that has no true equivalent in the 21st century. It is not insomnia. It is not a restless interruption. It is a planned, purposeful period of quietude. You are floating in a pool of time that belongs to no one but you. The heavy, leaden exhaustion of your first sleep has drained away, leaving behind a mind that is clear, calm, and strangely vibrant. You sit up slowly, the dried straw of your mattress rustling softly beneath the linen sheets. The air in the room is biting and crisp, smelling of cold ash, old wood, and the faint, sweet scent of the herbs tucked into your pillow to ward off bad dreams. You wrap a heavy wool cloak around your shoulders, feeling the rough texture of the fibers. You are not trying to force yourself back to sleep. That would be a waste of this precious, liminal hour. Think about the quality of your thoughts right now. In the bright, chaotic light of the day, your mind is a cluttered workshop. You are worried about the harvest, the price of grain, the leak in the thatch, or the gossip at the well. But in the dorval, the clutter has vanished. Your brain is producing a unique chemical cocktail. Because you have just emerged from several hours of deep sleep, your body is flooded with prolactin, a hormone that induces a sense of peace and tranquility. You feel a strange sort of euphoria, a quiet joy that makes the darkness feel like a sanctuary rather than a void. You might reach for a small tallow candle or a rushlight, striking a spark to bring a tiny, flickering globe of warmth into the room. In this pool of golden light, the world feels intimate and small. This is the hour when the great thinkers of the Middle Ages did their best work. While the rest of the village snores, the poet picks up a quill. The ink is cold and thick, but the words flow with a clarity that is impossible in the heat of noon. You find yourself reflecting on your life, not with the sharp edge of regret, but with the soft curiosity of a dreamer. You might use this time to pray. For the medieval mind, the night is the time when the veil between the physical world and the spiritual realm is at its thinnest. You whisper the words of the Paternoster, your breath blooming in a small cloud of white vapor. The silence of the night acts as a megaphone for the soul. You feel as though you are not just reciting words, but having a direct, private conversation with the divine. There is no priest to mediate, no choir to drown you out. It is just you and the vast, starlit mystery of the universe. But the dorval is not always a solitary experience. You hear a soft murmur from the other side of the room. Your spouse has also woken. There is no light needed for this conversation. You talk in low, rhythmic tones about things you would never mention during the day. You speak of your fears for the children, your hopes for the coming spring, or the strange dream you had about a white stag in a dark forest. There is a specific kind of intimacy that only exists in the middle of the night, wrapped in blankets while the world outside is frozen in shadows. Doctors of this era even suggest that this is the best time for a husband and wife to conceive a child, as the body is rested and the spirit is at ease. If you were to step outside your cottage door, you would see that you are not alone in your wakefulness. You look across the muddy lane and see a faint yellow glow in the window of the weaver's house. Perhaps they are finishing a difficult pattern, or perhaps they are simply sitting by their hearth, staring into the embers. You might even see a neighbor walking toward your door. In many medieval communities, it is perfectly normal to use the watch to visit a friend. You might share a cup of small ale or a crust of bread, talking quietly about the events of the day before retreating back to your respective homes. This hour is a bridge. It is the bridge between the first sleep, which is the sleep of the body, and the second sleep, which is the sleep of the soul. In the modern world, we have built walls to keep the night out. We have street lamps that turn midnight into a pale imitation of day, and we have screens that demand our attention every second we are awake. We have lost the Dorval. We have traded this hour of profound, creative stillness for the efficiency of an 8-hour block. We view waking up in the night as a failure of our biology, a malfunction to be fixed with pills or white noise machines. But as you sit here in the medieval night, you realize what a gift this time is. Your mind is wandering through territories it usually ignores. You find yourself solving a problem that has bothered you for weeks, or remembering a song your mother sang when you were a small child. The boundaries of your identity feel more fluid. You are not just a laborer, a mother, or a craftsman. You are a conscious entity drifting through the vastness of time. The creative potential of this hour cannot be overstated. Historians believe that many of the great oral traditions, the epic poems and the intricate folktales, were polished and perfected during these midnight watches. When you have nothing to look at but the shifting shapes of the shadows on the wall, your imagination is forced to provide the scenery. The monsters of the dark become characters in a story, and the whistling of the wind through the eaves becomes a melody. As the hour of the watch begins to draw to a close, you feel a change in your body. The alertness that pulled you out of your first sleep is starting to fade. The prolactin is being replaced by a gentle, rolling wave of melatonin. Your limbs begin to feel heavy again, and the cold of the room starts to seep through your cloak. The tiny flame of your rushlight gutters and dies, leaving you in the comforting embrace of the dark once more. You bank the fire, covering the remaining coals with a layer of ash so they will stay hot until the morning. You climb back into the warmth of the bed, where the heat of your body still lingers in the straw and the wool. This transition is different from the way you fell asleep the first time. The first sleep was an act of necessity, a collapse into unconsciousness driven by the physical toll of the day. This second sleep is a luxury. It is a slow, deliberate sinking into a deeper level of rest. As you close your eyes, you feel a sense of completion. You have visited the liminal space. You have communed with the night, with your thoughts, and perhaps with your God. The world outside is still dark, and the sun is still hours away from breaking over the horizon. But you are not worried. You are not checking a clock. You are simply letting the tide of the second sleep pull you under. The village remains silent, but it is a living silence. Hundreds of people are currently drifting back into their beds, their minds enriched by the quiet work of the Dorval. In the houses of the wealthy and the huts of the poor, the same rhythm is being followed. It is a shared human experience that transcends class and status. It is the heartbeat of the medieval night. You feel your breathing slow. The images of the day and the thoughts of the watch begin to blur together into a soft, gray mist. You are moving toward the final stage of the nightly journey. The most profound rest is yet to come, the deep, dreamless slumber that will carry you all the way to the first gray light of dawn. You are no longer a creature of the watch. You are becoming a creature of the second sleep, sliding away from the world of the living and into the quietest depths of the human experience. The liminal hour has passed, its work is done, and the darkness is now a cradle, waiting to hold you until the sun demands your return. You pull the heavy woolen blanket back over your shoulders, and the transition is almost instantaneous. The chill of the room, which felt so sharp and intrusive when you rose an hour ago, now feels like a comforting weight. You settle back into the indentation your body left in the straw mattress, and you find that the heat you abandoned has not entirely dissipated. It welcomes you back. This is the moment your ancestors called the second sleep, or sometimes the morning sleep. If the first sleep was a necessary collapse into oblivion after a day of backbreaking labor, this second session is something far more luxurious. It is the deep, restorative plunge into the well of the subconscious. As you close your eyes, you notice that your mind feels different than it did when you first went to bed at sundown. The first sleep was heavy and often dreamless, a blunt instrument of recovery. But now, having spent an hour awake in the middle of the night, your brain is in a unique state. Scientists in the future will call this state particularly rich in prolactin, a hormone that produces a sense of peace and quietude. To you, it simply feels like being wrapped in a cloud. You are not just tired, you are ready to explore the inner landscapes of your mind. The dreams you have during this second sleep are vivid, bright, and often narrative. In the medieval world, these are the dreams that matter. While the first sleep was for the body, the second sleep is for the soul. You might dream of ancestors walking through the fields with you, or of strange, symbolic animals speaking in riddles. Because you are drifting back into sleep from a state of full consciousness, the boundary between the waking world and the dream world is thin. You may even find yourself in a state of lucid dreaming, aware that you are asleep but capable of directing your thoughts through the strange architecture of your own imagination. The sun has not yet crested the horizon, but the world outside is beginning to stir in a way that feels distant and muffled. You hear the first faint rustle of the livestock in the pen outside. A rooster gives a tentative, muffled crow, testing the air. In the houses nearby, your neighbors are also sliding back into their second sleep. There is a communal rhythm to this. An entire village is collectively dreaming, held in a second period of rest that will carry them through to the full light of day. This second sleep is remarkably resilient. It is not easily broken by a passing cart or the sound of a distant bell. Your body has claimed this time. You will sleep for another 3 or 4 hours, a period of rest that is deeper and more stable than the first. When you finally wake for the second time, the world will be transformed. The terrifying, unpredictable darkness of the night will have been replaced by the golden, dusty light of the morning. As you drift, think for a moment about how this rhythm defines your life. You do not view sleep as a single block of time to be conquered. You do not worry about waking up at 3 in the morning. To you, that wakefulness is as natural as breathing. If you were to tell a medieval physician that you were worried because you woke up in the night, he would look at you with confusion. To him and to you, the night is a journey with a halfway point. You stop, you rest, you think, and then you continue. But as the centuries begin to turn, the world around you starts to change. The dawn of the modern era is approaching, and it brings with it a new way of seeing time. You begin to see the first flickers of a revolution that will eventually tear this two-sleep system apart. It starts in the cities. In London, Paris, and Amsterdam, the night is no longer a place of absolute darkness. Wealthy families begin to buy more candles. They start to stay up later. They attend theaters and salons. The first sleep begins to push further and further into the night. Then comes the arrival of the street lamp. At first, these are just lanterns hung from posts, but they represent a massive shift in human psychology. For the first time in history, the night is being conquered. People no longer feel the desperate need to retreat to their beds the moment the sun goes down. Socializing becomes a nighttime activity. The hour of the watch, that peaceful time you just enjoyed, starts to feel like an inconvenience. If you stay up until 11 or 12, you cannot afford to wake up for an hour in the middle of the night and still get enough rest to function the next day. By the time the 18th and 19th centuries arrive, the Industrial Revolution is in full swing. The factory whistle replaces the sun as the master of the day. Employers want workers who can stay at their machines for 12 or 14 hours at a stretch. The idea of a worker taking a middle-of-the-night break to pray or chat or reflect is seen as inefficient and old-fashioned. The pressure to compress sleep into a single, solid block becomes overwhelming. You see the language of sleep changing. People begin to talk about a good night of sleep as one that is uninterrupted. The very thing that you find natural, waking up in the darkness, becomes a medical condition. It is given a name, insomnia, but it is not a new disease. It is simply the ghost of your natural rhythm trying to assert itself in a world that no longer has room for it. The light bulb is the final blow. With the flick of a switch, the night is banished completely. We become a species that lives in a perpetual artificial day. As you lie there in your medieval bed, enjoying the final hour of your second sleep, you are experiencing something that the modern world has almost entirely lost. You are experiencing a life that is in tune with the biology of your brain. Modern researchers who have placed volunteers in environments without artificial light have found that, within weeks, those people return to your way of sleeping. They sleep for 4 hours, wake for 2, and sleep for 4 more. It is the natural state of the human animal. But for you, the journey is nearing its end. The light outside your window is no longer gray. It is turning a pale, watery blue. The shadows in the corner of your room are retreating. You can see the rough grain of the wood in the ceiling. You can see the dust motes dancing in the first slivers of light that have found their way through the shutters. Your second sleep is reaching its natural conclusion. You feel a sense of clarity as you wake for the final time. Unlike the groggy, confused state many people feel in the modern world when their alarm clocks scream at them, your awakening is slow and purposeful. Your body has completed its work. The first sleep repaired your muscles and cleared your mind. The second sleep processed your emotions and integrated your memories. You are ready for the day in a way that feels profound and total. You sit up and swing your legs over the side of the bed. The floor is cold, but you do not mind. You listen to the sounds of the house waking up. There is the clatter of a pot, the sound of a door creaking open, and the low murmur of voices. The community is reassembling itself. You will go out into the fields or the workshop, and you will carry the peace of that quiet hour of the watch with you. As you step out into the morning air, take a breath. The world is bright and loud and busy, but somewhere deep inside you, the memory of the 2 sleeps remains. Even hundreds of years in the future, when people wake up at 3 in the morning and stare at the ceiling in frustration, they are feeling the echo of your life. They are feeling the pull of the ancient rhythm that you have just lived through. They think they are broken, but they are actually just remembering what it means to be human in the dark. The sun is fully up now. The medieval night has retreated into the history books, taking its strange habits and its quiet wonders with it. You walk forward into the light of a new day, leaving the shadows of the 2 sleeps behind, but knowing that the darkness was never something to be feared. It was a home. It was a sanctuary. And as the modern dawn breaks over the horizon, you carry the secrets of the night with you into the noise of the coming world. You step across the threshold of a small timber-framed house as the last light of the sun dips below the horizon. The air inside is thick with the scent of wood smoke, dried herbs, and the heavy, earthy musk of people living in close quarters. In your modern life, you are used to the sanctity of the bedroom. You are used to a door that locks, a space that is yours alone, or perhaps shared with a single partner. But here, in the heart of the medieval world, the concept of a private sleeping space is not just rare, it is almost entirely non-existent. You look around the single main room of the cottage and see the centerpiece of the evening ritual. It is a large, wide bed, built low to the ground and stuffed with straw and coarse wool. This is not a sanctuary for one. This is the communal heart of the home. You are invited to take your place among the household. There is no hesitation from your hosts. In the medieval mind, to sleep alone is a strange and lonely fate, reserved for the extremely wealthy, the hermit, or the social outcast. For everyone else, sleep is a team sport. You find yourself lying down on a mattress that rustles loudly with every movement. To your left is the father of the house, and to your right are several children, their limbs tangled like a basket of puppies. At the foot of the bed, a servant or a traveling laborer might be curled up. You are all part of a single, breathing organism. This is the reality of the common coil. In an era where central heating is a fantasy and walls are thin enough for the wind to whistle through the cracks, body heat is the most precious resource you own. You feel the warmth of the person next to you radiating through their woolen tunic. It is a practical necessity, a survival strategy against the damp chill of the night. But as you lie there, staring up at the dark thatch of the ceiling, you realize that this physical closeness creates a kind of social intimacy that the modern world has largely forgotten. There are no secrets in a shared bed. You hear every sigh, every murmur of a dream, and every shift of a heavy limb. The social rules of the shared bed are complex and fascinating. You might think it would be a chaotic free-for-all, but there is a strict hierarchy to how you are positioned. Generally, the most important person in the house sleeps furthest from the door, tucked away in the warmest and safest corner. In a family setting, the father might sleep against the wall, followed by the mother, then the children arranged by age, with the youngest in the middle for maximum protection. Guests are often placed in the middle as a sign of hospitality, wrapped in the safety of the family unit. If you were a traveler staying at a medieval inn, the experience would be even more jarring. You would not pay for a room. You would pay for a bed, or more accurately, a spot in a bed. You might find yourself sharing a mattress with 2 or 3 total strangers. Imagine lying down next to a merchant you just met an hour ago over a bowl of pottage, or a friar on a pilgrimage, or a soldier returning from a local campaign. There is a profound level of trust required in this arrangement. You are at your most vulnerable when you sleep, yet you are pressed hip to hip with people whose names you might not even know. This shared intimacy served as a powerful social glue. When people sleep together, they become bedfellows in every sense of the word. The term bedfellow was not just a description of a physical location, it was a political and social category. In royal courts, being chosen to sleep in the same bed as the king was one of the highest honors imaginable. It signified absolute trust and proximity to power. For the common person, sharing a bed with a neighbor or a coworker fostered a sense of communal identity. You were literally and figuratively in it together. But what about the lack of privacy? You might wonder how people managed their personal lives or their intimate moments in such a crowded environment. The answer is that the medieval concept of privacy was simply different from ours. They did not equate privacy with being alone behind a closed door. Instead, privacy was something you carried with you. It was a mental state. People learned to tune out the world around them. In a crowded bed, you simply ignored what was happening 6 inches away from you. There was a silent agreement to provide a curtain of polite indifference to the sounds and movements of others. The physical bed itself was often the most expensive and prized possession in a household. Even if the house was little more than a hut, the bed was a massive piece of furniture, often passed down through generations in a will. It was more than just a piece of wood and straw. It was the stage upon which life happened. People were born in these shared beds. They recovered from illnesses in them, and they eventually died in them, surrounded by the same family members who had slept beside them every night of their lives. As the night deepens, you become aware of the uninvited guests in the bed. No matter how clean the household tries to be, the straw and wool are magnets for fleas, lice, and bedbugs. You feel a sharp nip on your ankle, then another on your shoulder. In the medieval world, these biting insects are a constant companion. They are so common that they are rarely even mentioned in diaries or letters except as a minor nuisance. You see your bedfellows scratching in their sleep, a rhythmic, subconscious reaction to the tiny invaders. This too is part of the shared experience. You are all being bitten by the same bugs, breathing the same air, and dreaming under the same roof. There is a strange comfort in this lack of isolation. In the modern world, we often struggle with a sense of loneliness and disconnection. We retreat into our private rooms and plug into our individual screens. But in the common coil of the medieval bed, loneliness is a physical impossibility. You are constantly reminded of your connection to the people around you. You are part of a pack, a tribe, a family. The rhythmic breathing of a dozen people creates a white noise that lulls you into a deep, heavy sleep. Consider the famous Great Bed of Ware, a massive four-poster bed built in the late 16th century that was said to accommodate 12 people at once. While this was an extreme example designed for an inn to attract customers, it perfectly illustrates the cultural mindset. People wanted to be together. The idea of a single person rattling around in a massive bed was seen as wasteful and slightly eerie. The more the merrier was not just a saying, it was a sleeping arrangement. This communal way of life extended beyond the bed. The entire house was a shared space where the boundaries between individuals were blurred. You would eat from the same bowl, drink from the same cup, and work side by side in the fields. The shared bed was simply the final, most intimate expression of this collective existence. It reinforced the idea that the individual was secondary to the group. Your identity was defined by who you slept next to and who you cared for. As you lie there in the dark, you realize that the move toward private bedrooms was one of the most significant shifts in human history. It began with the wealthy, who started to build separate chambers as a way to display their status and distance themselves from their servants. Over centuries, this trend trickled down to the middle classes and eventually to everyone. We traded the warmth and social cohesion of the communal bed for the quiet and autonomy of the private room. We gained a space to be ourselves, but we lost the constant, reassuring presence of others. The medieval night was a time of fear. People believed the darkness was filled with demons, witches, and restless spirits. They believed the night air itself could carry disease. In the face of such terrors, the shared bed was a fortress. You were not alone in the dark. You had a wall of human bodies between you and the unknown. This physical proximity provided a psychological shield that made the terrors of the night manageable. When you hear a strange creak in the floorboards or the howl of a wolf in the distance, you don't have to face it alone. You can feel the steady heartbeat of your neighbor, and that is enough to let you drift back into slumber. You begin to understand that the medieval person would likely find your modern bedroom to be a cold and frightening place. To them, a room where you sleep all by yourself would feel like a prison cell or a tomb. They would wonder why you would choose to be so isolated, why you would deny yourself the warmth of your fellow humans. They would see our quest for privacy as a strange sort of self-imposed exile. In the common coil, the bed was a place of storytelling, of whispered gossip, and of shared prayers. Before the light of the fire fully died out, the household would talk. They would recount the events of the day, plan for the morrow, and share the folklore of their ancestors. The bed was a theater of oral tradition. By the time you fall asleep, your head is full of the collective wisdom and worries of your companions. Your dreams are not just yours alone. They are colored by the shared life of the house. As the first hint of gray light begins to filter through the cracks in the shutters, the heap of bodies begins to stir. There is no sudden alarm clock to jar you awake. Instead, there is a gradual transition. One person shifts, another stretches, a child begins to murmur. The warmth of the bed is hard to leave, especially when you know the floor will be ice cold beneath your feet. But the communal ritual continues as everyone rises together to face the labor of the day. You leave the shared bed not as an individual who has just spent 8 hours in a vacuum, but as a member of a group that has spent the night reinforcing its bonds. You carry the warmth of your bedfellows with you as you step out into the morning mist, ready to face the world once again. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in the center of a small, dim room as the sun begins to dip below the horizon. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and something sharply herbal. You turn your gaze toward the corner of the room, toward the place where you will spend the next 8 hours. This is not the plush, multi-layered mattress of the 21st century. There are no memory foam contours here, no cooling gel inserts, and certainly no adjustable bases. Instead, you are looking at a construction of organic matter, rough textiles, and tensioned cords that tells a story of survival, status, and the constant struggle between physical comfort and spiritual purity. As you step closer, the first thing you notice is the sound. Even before you touch the bed, your movements near it cause a dry, rhythmic crunching. You reach down and press your hand into the mattress, or rather, the ticking. This is the sacking, a heavy, coarse bag made of linen or hemp. Beneath your palms, you feel the sharp, uneven stalks of straw shifting. This is your primary support system. For the vast majority of people in the Middle Ages, the bed was essentially a giant tea bag stuffed with the leftovers of the harvest. Think about the texture of that straw. If you are a peasant, this is rye or wheat straw, perhaps even pea haulms if it has been a bad year. It is not soft. It is brittle and prickly. As you lay your weight down, those sharp ends find the gaps in the weave of the sacking, poking through to graze your skin. It is a constant, tactile reminder of the fields. Throughout the night, every time you turn, the bed speaks back to you with a loud, rustling protest. There is no such thing as a silent night in a medieval bed. You are sleeping on the very same material that litters the floor of the barn or the tavern, and that connection to the earth is inescapable. But the physicality of the bed goes deeper than just the stuffing. If you are fortunate enough to have a bedstead, you are not resting on a solid platform. You are suspended. Look beneath the sacking and you will see a lattice of thick hempen ropes threaded through the wooden frame. These ropes are the only things keeping you off the cold, damp floor. Over time, under the weight of a family, these ropes begin to stretch and sag. You feel yourself sinking toward the center, gravitating toward your bedfellows in a forced huddle. This is why you carry a bed wrench, a heavy wooden tool used to twist the pegs and pull the ropes taut once more. When you hear the phrase to sleep tight, you are standing at the very origin of that concept. To sleep tight is to sleep on ropes that have been freshly tensioned, keeping your body level and supported. Now, consider the life that exists within your bed. You are never truly alone when you lie down. The straw is a vibrant ecosystem. Despite your best efforts to dry the stalks before stuffing the mattress, the warmth of your body creates a microclimate that invites guests. Fleas, lice, and the dreaded bedbug are your constant companions. You can feel them. As you settle into the dark, you might sense a tiny, rhythmic tickle across your forearm or the sharp nip of a flea. This is why the smells in the room are so pungent. You have scattered dried wormwood, lavender, and mint into the straw, hoping the aromatic oils will ward off the biting insects. You have smeared the bedposts with tallow or vinegar in a desperate attempt to create a barrier. The bed is a battlefield where you fight a nightly war for the integrity of your own skin. If you were to move from the peasant's cottage to the manor house, the physicality of the bed changes, but it does not necessarily become less strange. Here, the sacking might be filled with flock, which is the bits of wool left over from the shearing process, or even down feathers if you are truly wealthy. But even here, the bed is a heavy, monumental presence. You look up and see the tester, a great wooden canopy draped with heavy wool curtains. These are not just for privacy. They are a structural necessity. In a world of thatched roofs and drafty timber frames, the bed curtains are your final line of defense against falling debris, soot from the fire, and the biting winter air. To sleep in a high medieval bed is to be encased in a fabric box, a room within a room, where your own breath provides the only warmth. The physicality of the bed is also tied to the concept of the bedstaff. This is a long, smooth stick kept by the side of the bed. You use it for two very practical reasons. First, because the straw and flock settle into deep, uncomfortable lumps during the night, you use the staff to beat and level the mattress each morning, trying to restore some semblance of a flat surface. Second, the staff is your reach. If the bed is large and several people are sleeping in it, you use the staff to smooth the sheets over the people in the middle, ensuring everyone is tucked in. It is a tool of domestic order in a world where the bed is often a chaotic, lumpy landscape. But the bed is not just a physical object. It is a site of intense moral and spiritual anxiety. In the medieval mind, the bed is the place where the soul is most vulnerable. As you lie there in the dark, the physical sensations of the bed take on a supernatural weight. The heaviness of the blankets, the pressing of the dark, and the sudden, unexplained paralysis of sleep are not seen as mere biological functions. They are the work of the nightmare. You believe that a literal creature, a heavy, demonic weight, sits upon your chest to steal your breath. The very word nightmare comes from this physical sensation of being pressed into your straw mattress by a malicious spirit. The bed is also the site of the sin of sloth. To linger too long in the warmth of the blankets is to invite the devil. You are taught that the bed is a premonition of the grave. Every night when you pull the rough linen sheet up to your chin, you are practicing for your shroud. The physicality of the bed is a constant memento mori, a reminder of death. The wooden frame is shaped like a coffin, and the act of closing the curtains is like being buried. You do not simply flop onto the bed at the end of the day. You enter it with ritual. You cross yourself, you say your prayers, and you might even sprinkle the straw with holy water to cleanse the very place where your body is most exposed. The linens themselves tell a story of labor. If you are touching linen, someone has spent months growing flax, retting it in water, breaking the stalks, spinning the fibers, and weaving them on a hand loom. The fabric is cool and crisp, but it is also heavy. It doesn't wick moisture like modern synthetics. Instead, it absorbs the sweat of the night, becoming heavy and damp by dawn. The physical experience of the medieval bed is one of dampness and weight. You are always slightly cold or slightly too hot or slightly itchy. There is no neutral state of comfort. Even the way you position your body is dictated by the physical constraints of the bed. Because the straw settles and the ropes sag, you often find yourself sleeping in a propped-up position. You use large, firm bolsters made of straw or coarse hair to lean against. This is partly to aid digestion and partly because laying completely flat is seen as being too close to the position of a corpse. You are half sitting, half lying, caught in a permanent state of transition between the world of the living and the world of dreams. As you lie there, you feel the weight of the blankets. These are not light quilts. They are heavy, felted wool rugs that press down on your limbs. They are scratchy and smell of the sheep they came from. In the dead of winter, you might pile 3 or 4 of these on top of yourself until the sheer physical pressure makes it difficult to turn over. This weight is comforting in a way, a heavy armor against the freezing air of the unheated room. You are pinned to the straw by the weight of your own survival. The physical reality of the medieval bed is a sensory overload. It is the smell of lavender mixed with old sweat. It is the sound of rustling straw and the creak of tightening ropes. It is the sight of heavy curtains closing out the world and the touch of coarse linen against a tired back. It is a place of birth, a place of prayer, and a place of death. When you finally drift off, you are not just closing your eyes on a piece of furniture. You are surrendering to a complex machine made of wood, fiber, and faith. The bed is the most intimate space you own, yet it is shared with family, with insects, and with the heavy expectations of the church. It is a world of sacking and straw, where every night is a physical journey through the textures of the medieval world. You are standing in the muddy street of a busy market town called Ware, just 20 miles north of London. It is the late 16th century, a time when the medieval world is slowly hardening into the Renaissance. Yet the habits of the past still cling to every timber and floorboard. You have spent the day traveling on the Great North Road, your bones jarred by the rhythm of a horse or the heavy thud of a wooden cart. The damp English air has seeped through your woolen cloak, and your mind is fixed on one thing only. You need a place to rest. You push through the heavy oak doors of an inn known as the Saracen's Head. The air inside is thick with the scent of roasted meat, stale ale, and the pungent smoke of a peat fire. The innkeeper greets you with a weary nod and leads you up a flight of creaking stairs. He does not hand you a key to a private room. He does not promise you a solitary sanctuary. Instead, he swings open a door to a large chamber, and your eyes widen in disbelief at what stands before you. There, dominating the room like a wooden cathedral, is a bed of such monumental proportions that it seems more like a stage than a piece of furniture. This is the Great Bed of Ware. It is nearly 11 feet square and stands over 7 feet tall. It is crafted from heavy, darkened oak, intricately carved with the figures of lions, satyrs, and strange, swirling patterns that seem to move in the flickering light of your tallow candle. It is not just a bed. It is an institution, and you are not going to be sleeping in it alone. As you step closer, the sheer scale of the thing becomes overwhelming. The headboard is a forest of carved wood, and the heavy tester, the roof of the bed, is supported by massive pillars that look like they could hold up the roof of the inn itself. The innkeeper informs you that tonight, you will be sharing this vast expanse of straw and feathers with a dozen other travelers. You look at the bed and see that it is already occupied by several figures, their shapes huddled under heavy woolen blankets, their breathing rhythmic and deep. You must understand that in this world, the idea of a private bedroom is a luxury reserved for the highest nobility, and even then, it is a rare thing. For you, a traveler in the medieval or early modern era, Sleep is not a solitary act. It is a communal performance. You are about to participate in a culture where the presence of others provides the only warmth and security available in the dead of night. You begin to undress, but you do not strip bare. You keep on your linen shift or your undershirt, for modesty still exists even in this crowded space. You climb onto the edge of the mattress, which is thick and stuffed with a mixture of down and straw. As you crawl toward an empty patch of space, the bed groans under your weight. The ropes that support the mattress creak and stretch. You find a spot between a merchant from Cambridge and a tired soldier returning from the coast. There is no wall between you. There is only the soft, radiating heat of their bodies. You pull the heavy covers up to your chin. These are not the light, airy sheets of your own time. These are thick, heavy rugs of wool and linen, smelling of lavender and old sweat. The weight of them is comforting, pressing you down into the mattress. In this era, the night is a place of profound danger. Outside the walls of this inn, the darkness is absolute, filled with the very real threats of outlaws, wolves, and the perceived presence of supernatural spirits. But here, within the massive frame of the great bed of ware, there is safety in numbers. The collective breath of 12 strangers creates a barrier against the cold and the unknown. You lie there, staring up at the carved underside of the wooden canopy. You can hear the muffled sounds of the inn below, the distant laughter of drinkers and the clatter of plates. But in this room, the atmosphere is different. There is a strange, quiet etiquette to communal sleeping. You learn quickly not to sprawl. You keep your limbs tucked close to your body. You respect the invisible boundaries of your fellow sleepers. If someone rolls over, the entire mattress shifts, and you must adjust your own weight to maintain the balance. It is a slow, unconscious dance of humans in the dark. The great bed of ware became famous for exactly this reason. It was built as a marvel, a piece of marketing for the inns of ware to attract travelers who wanted to say they had conquered the giant bed. It was a place of social leveling. In this bed, the wealthy merchant and the humble clerk are equals, both subjected to the same drafty air and the same occasional kick from a dreaming neighbor. Even the great William Shakespeare knew of this bed, mentioning its vastness in his plays. It represents a world where the boundary of the self is much softer than it is today. You are not an island. You are part of a huddle. As the night deepens, you begin to notice the sensory details of this shared existence. There is the smell of the wood itself, the deep, earthy scent of ancient oak that has been polished by the oils of 1,000 hands. There is the sound of the wind rattling the leaded glass windows, a sound that would be terrifying if you were alone. But here it is merely a backdrop to the snoring and sighing of your companions. You realize that in the medieval mind, sleep is not just a biological necessity, but a communal ritual that reinforces the bonds of humanity. You might find it difficult to imagine how anyone could truly rest in such conditions. Your modern sensibilities cry out for a locked door and a silent room. But as you lie there, you feel a sense of profound stillness. There is something deeply primal about sleeping in a pack. The heat of the person next to you is a constant reminder that you are not alone in the dark. It is the ultimate defense against the nightmare that mythical had believed to sit on the chests of those who sleep alone, stealing their breath. Here, with 12 pairs of lungs working in unison, the nightmare has no place to land. During the night, the bed becomes a theater of small human dramas. Someone might talk in their sleep, whispering fragments of a life you will never know. Another might reach out in a half-awake daze, seeking the comfort of a hand or a shoulder, before realizing where they are and pulling back. There are the whispered apologies when someone must climb over the others to reach the chamber pot in the corner of the room, the floorboards complaining under their feet. Then, the cold rush of air as they lift the covers to climb back in, and the collective groan of the group as the warmth is momentarily lost. The great bed of Ware is also a place of humor and legend. Tales are told of parties of friends who would rent the bed specifically to see how many people they could fit. Stories circulate of 26 butchers and their wives all cramming into the frame for a wager, or travelers carving their initials into the wood as a mark of their stay. You can feel these marks beneath your fingers as you trace the carvings on the bedposts. Each scratch and dent is a ghost of a previous sleeper, a record of a human being who sought the same warmth you are seeking now. As the first gray light of dawn begins to filter through the windows, the bed begins to stir. The transition from sleep to wakefulness is not a sudden, private alarm. It is a slow, collective awakening. The person next to you shifts. A heavy sigh ripples through the row of bodies, and the innkeeper returns with a basin of water and a fresh candle. One by one, the inhabitants of the great bed of Ware untangle themselves from the heap of blankets. You sit up, your hair tousled and your limbs stiff, and you exchange nods with the people you have shared the most intimate of acts with, even though you do not know their names. You watch as the soldier pulls on his boots and the merchant adjusts his tunic. There is a brief, shared moment of recognition, a shared survival of the night, before everyone begins their separate journeys once again. The bed, now a chaotic mess of rumpled sheets and flattened straw, stands empty for a few hours, waiting for the next tide of weary travelers to fill its frame. You leave the room and descend the stairs, the smell of breakfast ale and pottage drawing you back toward the world of the living. As you walk out into the morning air of Ware, you realize that your perception of sleep has changed. You have moved beyond the idea of rest as a private withdrawal. You have experienced it as a shared human experience, a physical manifestation of the need for community. The great bed of Ware still exists today, preserved in a museum, its dark wood silent and its vast mattress gone. When people look at it now, they see a curiosity, a giant piece of furniture that seems ridiculous or unnecessary. But you know better. You have felt the weight of its blankets and the warmth of the strangers who once filled it. You understand that in the medieval world, the bed was not just a place to dream, but a fortress of wood and wool where the human spirit huddled together to keep the darkness at bay. It was a world where privacy was a foreign concept, and where the most profound silence was found not in solitude, but in the rhythmic, collective breathing of a dozen souls in the great bed. The collective breathing of your family and servants creates a low, rhythmic hum in the room, but as the last ember of the hearth fire pops and fades into a dull orange glow, that sound no longer feels like a comfort. In the medieval mind, the night is not merely the absence of the sun. It is a thick, heavy veil that drops over the world, concealing things that have no place in the daylight. You lie there, tucked beneath heavy wool blankets that smell of wood smoke and sheep lanolin, but your eyes remain wide, staring into the impenetrable shadows of the rafters. To you, the darkness is a physical territory, a wild and lawless frontier where the rules of the living are suspended. And in this frontier, you are at your most vulnerable because you are about to lose the one thing that protects you, your consciousness. In the 14th century, falling asleep is an act of profound courage. You believe that as your body stills, the boundary between your soul and the spirit world thins to the width of a single hair. You have heard the stories whispered by the village elders and preached from the pulpit. You know that the air is thick with unseen entities. There are the ghosts of the unbaptized, the spirits of the woods, and most terrifying of all, the demons that specialize in the night. You are thinking specifically of the incubus. The incubus is a creature of weight and suffocation. Perhaps you have felt it before, or you have heard your neighbor describe the sensation. You are drifting off to sleep when suddenly you find you cannot move. A crushing pressure descends upon your chest, as if a heavy stone has been placed on your lungs. You try to cry out, but your tongue feels like lead. In your mind, this is not a biological glitch or a trick of the brain known as sleep paralysis. No, this is the physical presence of a demon sitting upon your ribcage, seeking to steal your breath or worse, to corrupt your soul while you are powerless to resist. To combat this very real threat, you do not rely on locks and keys alone. Iron bolts can keep out a thief, but they are useless against a spirit that can slip through the cracks in the floorboards or ride in on a draft of cold air. Instead, you turn to the only thing that can match the power of the dark: the holy and the hallowed. Your bedtime routine is a complex series of spiritual fortifications, a way of building a fortress of light around your sleeping body. You begin with the most basic but powerful weapon in your arsenal: the sign of the cross. You do not just do this once. You trace the shape over your forehead, your chest, and your shoulders with deliberate care. Then you reach out and mark the air above your pillow. You mark the four corners of your bedstead. You might even trace the symbol on the dusty floorboards beneath you. This is not a casual gesture. It is a seal. You are marking this space as territory belonging to God, a place where no demon should feel welcome. But the night is long, and your own prayers might fade as you slip into dreams. You need something more permanent. You reach under your straw mattress and feel for the cold, reassuring touch of iron. You have placed a pair of iron shears or a simple iron nail beneath your head. Folklore tells you that the creatures of the night, whether they be the fae or the fallen angels, cannot abide the touch of cold iron. It is a metal born of the earth and forged in fire, and its presence acts as a silent sentry while you slumber. Beside the iron, you might have tucked a small bundle of dried herbs. The scent of mugwort and St. John's wort rises faintly as you shift your weight. These are not just for the pleasant aroma. St. John's wort is known as the chaste devil. It is believed that the golden yellow flowers, which bloom brightest during the summer solstice, carry the power of the sun within their dried petals. By keeping them near your head, you are keeping a fragment of daylight with you in the deep of the night. You hope the demon will see the spiritual light of the herb and fly back into the shadows. You look toward the door of the chamber. Hanging from a simple twine string is a stone you found in a riverbed months ago. It is a hag stone, a pebble with a natural hole worn through its center by the constant movement of water. To you, this is a powerful amulet. It is said that if you look through the hole of the stone, you might see the hidden world, but when hung over a bed, it acts as a filter. It catches the nightmares and the heavy, malevolent spirits, preventing them from reaching the sleeper. The hole in the stone represents a way out, a path for the evil to pass through and dissipate into the night air without ever touching your skin. Your preparations continue with the spoken word. You recite the Pater Noster, the Our Father, with a focused intensity. But there are other, more specific charms you use as well. You whisper the names of the four evangelists: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. You ask them to stand at the four posts of your bed. This is a common rhyme, a piece of folk liturgy that every child in your village knows by heart. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bless the bed that I lie on. In your mind, you see them clearly, for towering figures of light standing guard with swords drawn, their backs to you as they face the darkness of the room. With them on watch, the incubus will find no purchase on your chest. As you settle further into your blankets, you remember the words of the priest from the last feast day. He spoke of the importance of the evening blessing. In wealthier households, a priest might actually be brought in to sprinkle holy water on the bed and the walls, reciting Latin incantations to purge the room of any lingering malice. But for you, a few drops of holy water saved from the last church service will have to suffice. You flick the droplets toward the dark corners of the ceiling, watching them vanish into the shadows. You believe that each drop is a spark that scorched the invisible skin of any entity lurking there. The fear of the night is not just about demons, however. It is also about the wandering soul. You have been taught that when you dream, your soul might actually leave your body, traveling through the spirit world. This is a dangerous journey. If your soul cannot find its way back, or if it is intercepted by a malevolent force, your body will never wake up. To guide your soul back home, you might keep a small candle, a rushlight, burning in a dish of grease. The flickering flame is a lighthouse in the dark, a signal fire for your wandering spirit to follow when the first light of dawn begins to break. You also think of the salt. A small bowl of salt sits on the table near your bed. Salt is pure. It does not rot. It is the enemy of decay. In the same way it preserves meat, you believe it preserves the spirit. You might have even sprinkled a thin line of salt across the threshold of the door or along the windowsill. No creature of the night can cross a line of salt without counting every grain, or so the stories say, and by the time they finished, the sun would have risen and destroyed them. Now, as the house truly settles and the sounds of the farm animals outside grow quiet, you finally feel the weight of sleep pressing down on your eyelids. But it is a different kind of weight than that of the incubus. It is the heavy, warm blanket of a soul that feels protected. You have done everything you can. You have used iron and herb, stone and salt, prayer and holy water. You have transformed your bed from a simple piece of furniture into a sacred sanctuary. You close your eyes and listen to the rhythmic breathing of those around you. In this era, you are never truly alone, even in your dreams. The presence of your family provides a physical shield, their bodies acting as a barrier against the cold. But it is the spiritual shield you have built that allows your heart rate to slow. You trust in the charms. You trust that the names of the saints are etched into the very air around you. As you drift into that first deep sleep, you are not thinking of the biological functions of the brain or the stages of rapid eye movement. You are thinking of the invisible war being waged in the rafters. You are a soldier in that war, and your weapons are your faith and your folklore. The night is no longer a void. It is a space you have conquered with the help of the divine. You surrender to the darkness, knowing that the 4 evangelists are standing at your bedside, their golden eyes watching the shadows, waiting for the first hint of the morning sun to turn the world gold once again. You are safe. You are guarded. And for a few hours, the incubus is nothing more than a frustrated shadow, unable to pierce the wall of holy charms you have built around your soul. The darkness in your stone cell is not merely a lack of light. It is a physical weight, cold and absolute, pressing down on your eyelids. You have been asleep for perhaps 3 hours, lost in the deep, heavy oblivion that comes after a day of tilling the abbey fields and scrubbing the stone floors of the refectory. In the world outside these walls, the peasants in the village are currently enjoying their first sleep. They are tucked into straw mattresses, perhaps dreaming of the harvest or the warmth of the coming spring. But for you, the night is not a time of uninterrupted surrender to the body. For you, the night is a battlefield where the soul must conquer the flesh. Suddenly, the silence is shattered. It is not a gentle sound. It is the bronze clang of the bell, echoing through the cloisters and vibrating in the very marrow of your bones. This is the signal for matins. It is the middle of the night, perhaps midnight, perhaps 2 in the morning, depending on the season and the internal clock of the precentor. You do not groan. You do not roll over and pull the thin wool blanket over your head. To do so would be to yield to the demon of sloth, the midday devil who also haunts the midnight hours. You sit up. The air in the dormitory is freezing, so cold that your breath blooms in a white cloud before your face. You find your boots in the dark by touch alone. Your fingers are stiff. You pull on your heavy wool habit, the fabric scratchy and smelling of old lanolin and wood smoke. There is no private room for you. You are in the dorter, the great common sleeping hall of the monastery. Around you, dozens of other shadows are rising in the gloom. You hear the rustle of straw, the soft thud of feet hitting the floor, and the occasional muffled cough. No one speaks. The rule of Saint Benedict is clear. This is the time of the great silence. From the conclusion of Compline in the evening until the end of Prime in the morning, words are forbidden. The only sound allowed is the communication of the soul with the Creator. You join the line of hooded figures shuffling toward the night stairs. These are the stone steps that lead directly from the dormitory down into the transept of the church. Your feet are bare in your leather sandals, and the stone is like ice. Every step is a prayer. You descend into the belly of the abbey. The church is a cavern of shadows, illuminated only by a few guttering beeswax candles near the choir stalls. The scent of incense from the previous evening still lingers, heavy and sweet, mixing with the smell of damp stone and the faint, metallic tang of the night air. You take your place in the choir stalls. The wood is old and dark, carved with the faces of saints and monsters that seem to writhe in the flickering candlelight. You stand. You will stand for a long time. The office of matins is the longest of the 8 canonical hours. It is a marathon of psalms, lessons, and responsories. The chanting begins. It is a low, rhythmic drone, a sea of masculine voices rising and falling in a language that feels as old as the earth itself. The Latin words flow over you, and for a moment, the exhaustion lifts. You are part of a machine of prayer, a spiritual wall protecting the world while it sleeps. But the body is a stubborn thing. As the second hour of chanting begins, the weight returns. Your head feels heavy, as if it were made of lead. Your eyelids began to droop. This is the danger zone. This is where the art of the interrupted rest becomes a physical struggle. You feel your knees buckle slightly, and you snap your head back up, your heart racing. You look across the choir at your brothers. Some are swaying almost imperceptibly. Others have their eyes squeezed shut in intense concentration, or perhaps they are simply resting their retinas for a precious few seconds. Then you see him. One of the senior monks, known as the circuitor, is moving silently through the shadows. He carries a small lantern, its light shielded so it only casts a narrow beam. He is the guardian of wakefulness. He patrols the stalls, looking for any brother whose head has sunk too low or whose chanting has slowed to a mumble. If he finds you sleeping, the punishment is not a lash or a scolding. It is far more humiliating. He will stop in front of you and hold the lantern directly to your face until you wake. Then you must take the lantern from him and continue the patrol yourself, searching for another sleeper to whom you can pass the burden of the light. The shame of being caught in the arms of Morpheus is enough to keep your eyes wide, staring at the illuminated manuscript on the lectern until the letters dance like ants. Why do you do this? Why break the natural rhythm of human rest in such a violent, structured way? To the medieval mind, sleep was a dangerous state. It was a cousin to death, a time when the soul was vulnerable and the will was dormant. By rising in the middle of the night, you are asserting control. You are keeping watch, just as the apostles were commanded to do in the Garden of Gethsemane. You are the vanguard. While the king sleeps in his castle and the peasant sleeps in his hut, you are awake, holding back the darkness with the sheer force of your voice and your fatigue. The service of matins bleeds into lauds, the office of the dawn. By the time the first gray light begins to filter through the high, narrow windows, your legs are aching and your voice is a raspy whisper. But as the sun finally touches the glass, turning the gray to a pale, watery blue, a strange sensation washes over you. It is a second wind, a clarity that only comes from deep sleep deprivation combined with intense focus. The world feels thin, as if the veil between heaven and earth has been worn away by the hours of chanting. Finally, the signal is given to return to the daughter. This is the moment you have been waiting for. This is the reward for your vigil. You climb the night stairs once more, but the mood is different. The great silence still holds, but there is a sense of accomplishment in the air. You lie back down on your straw mattress. You do not need to undress. You are already wearing your habit. You pull the wool blanket up to your chin. This second period of sleep is short, usually no more than 2 or 3 hours before the bell rings again for prime and the start of the day's labor. But this sleep is different from the first. It is intense and vivid. Because your rest was interrupted, your brain plunges immediately into a world of complex, often spiritual dreams. The medieval monk believed these dreams were sometimes visions, messages sent in the quiet space created by their sacrifice. You drift off, the rhythm of the psalms still echoing in your ears, feeling the profound stillness of the abbey. In the secular world, people talk about the watch, that period between the first and second sleep where they might talk or read. But for you, that watch is a sacred duty. You have transformed a biological necessity into a liturgical art form. You have learned to live in the margins of the night, finding a strange, exhausted peace in the hours when the rest of the world is dead to the light. As your eyes close for this final, brief rest, you are not just a man sleeping. You are a sentinel who has finished his shift, falling into a slumber that has been earned through the sweat of prayer and the iron discipline of the bell. The sun rises higher, hitting the stone walls of the abbey and warming the air just enough to make the transition back to the waking world bearable. When the bell rings again, you will rise for the final time today, your body perhaps tired, but your spirit tempered like steel in the forge of the night. This cycle will repeat tomorrow and the day after and for the rest of your life. You are a monk of the Middle Ages, and for you, sleep is not a rite. It is a gift, a tool, and a sacrifice, all wrapped in the cold, silent shadows of the cloisters. You have mastered the art of the interrupted rest, and in doing so, you believe you have moved one step closer to the eternal wakefulness of the world to come. Imagine you are standing in the middle of a narrow cobblestone street in the year 1840. The air is no longer sweet with the scent of damp earth or wood smoke from a hearth. Instead, it is thick and yellow, smelling of sulfur, coal, and the metallic tang of iron. You look up at the sky, but you cannot see the stars that guided your ancestors through their midnight watch. The heavens are hidden behind a heavy, rolling blanket of smog that never seems to lift. You are no longer living by the rhythm of the sun or the gentle pull of your own biology. You are living by the whistle. For centuries, your ancestors enjoyed a divided rest. They slept in two distinct halves, separated by a period of wakefulness that felt as natural as breathing. But as you stand here in the shadow of a towering brick textile mill, that ancient way of life is dying. The Industrial Revolution is not just changing how things are made, it is changing who you are. It is rewiring your brain and rewriting the very schedule of your soul. You hear a rhythmic tapping on a window nearby. It is not a bird or a ghost. It is the knocker up. This is a man hired to walk the streets with a long bamboo pole, tapping on the glass of every worker in the neighborhood. He will not stop until he sees you move, until he knows you are awake. In the old world, you would have woken up naturally from your first sleep, spent a few hours in the quiet dark, and then drifted back into a second slumber. But there is no room for a second sleep in the age of the machine. If you are not at the factory gates by 5 in the morning, you will lose your wage. If you lose your wage, you do not eat. The factory whistle screams, a piercing, mechanical shriek that tears through the morning mist. It is the new sound of dawn. This whistle does not care if you are tired. It does not care if your body is craving that second deep rest that your great-grandparents considered a gift from God. The whistle demands that you consolidate your sleep. It demands that you take your rest in one single heavy block so that you can give the rest of your hours to the gears and the looms. You walk toward the mill, and you notice something strange about the city. It never truly gets dark anymore. In the medieval village, night was a total velvety blackness. But here, gas lamps flicker along the main roads. Inside the shops and the factories, the hiss of gas light creates a sickly, constant glow. This is the first great thief of sleep. Before this, the night was a barrier that stopped almost all work. You could not weave cloth or forge iron in the pitch black of a medieval midnight. But now, with the invention of artificial light, the night has been conquered. The boundary between day and night is blurring, and as it vanishes, so does your freedom to sleep when you choose. You enter the factory, and the noise is deafening. The clatter of hundreds of power looms creates a wall of sound that vibrates in your teeth. You will stand here for 12, 14, or even 16 hours. Your task is simple and repetitive. You are a human part of a mechanical process. Because the machines never get tired, the people who run them are expected to mimic that endurance. The concept of time itself has shifted. In the past, time was task-oriented. You worked until the field was plowed or the bread was baked. If you felt sluggish in the afternoon, you might take a nap. If you felt energized at midnight, you might mend a net or write a letter. But now, time is a commodity. It is something to be sold by the hour. Every minute you spend in the quiet wakefulness of the old midnight watch is now seen as a minute stolen from your employer. By the middle of the 19th century, the middle and upper classes begin to look down on the old ways. You hear the doctors and the preachers talking about the importance of a single, solid night of sleep. They call it a sign of a disciplined mind. They start to view the natural tendency to wake up in the middle of the night not as a holy time for prayer or reflection, but as a medical problem. They call it insomnia. This is a word that would have baffled a medieval peasant. To them, waking up at 2 in the morning was as normal as eating lunch. But to the industrial mind, it is a failure of the body. You are told that if you cannot sleep for 8 hours straight, you are sick or lazy. The pressure to perform is immense. To cope with the long, grueling hours and the lack of a midday rest, you turn to new substances. Coffee and tea, once luxuries for the wealthy, have become the fuel of the working class. You drink dark, bitter tea laced with sugar to keep your eyes open as the afternoon sun hits the soot-stained windows. You are using chemicals to override the natural signals of your brain. You are forcing your body to stay awake when it wants to rest, And then, when you finally crawl into your crowded bed at night, you are so exhausted that you collapse into a stupor. This exhaustion is different from the tiredness of the past. It is not the healthy fatigue of a day spent in the fresh air. It is a heavy, leaden weight. Because you only have one chance to sleep, you begin to worry about it. What if you cannot fall asleep immediately? What if you wake up at 3 in the morning and cannot get back to sleep before the knocker-up arrives? This anxiety creates a cycle of stress that was almost unknown in the medieval world. The peaceful, quiet bridge between the first and second sleep has been replaced by a panicked counting of hours. You stare at the shadows on the ceiling, calculating how many minutes are left before the whistle blows again. As the decades pass, the memory of the two sleeps begins to fade from the collective consciousness. By the time your children are grown, they have never known a world where people got up at midnight to chat with their neighbors or contemplate the stars. They grow up believing that the 8-hour block is the only way humans have ever slept. The literature changes too. In the old books, characters would talk about their first sleep as a matter of course. But in the new novels of the Victorian era, characters simply go to bed and stay there until morning. The language of the night has been edited. The impact on your domestic life is profound. In the medieval house, the bedroom was a social space during the watch. You might share a bed with siblings or friends, and the time between sleeps was a time for intimacy, for storytelling, and for deep connection. But in the industrial city, the bed is just a place to recharge a battery. Privacy becomes more common, but so does isolation. The night is no longer a shared experience. It is a private struggle to get enough rest to survive the coming day. You see the shift in the very architecture of the world. Houses are built with separate bedrooms, designed to shut out the noise and light of the street. Curtains become thicker to block out the glow of the gas lamps. Everything is designed to create an artificial cocoon where the one-shot sleep can happen. We have turned ourselves into creatures of the clock. We have traded the fluid, rhythmic sleep of our ancestors for the rigid, efficient sleep of the machine age. As you leave the factory at the end of a 16-hour shift, your bones aching and your eyes burning, you look at the moon hanging pale and sickly above the chimneys. You do not have the energy to wonder about the cosmos. You do not have the spirit to pray or the breath to sing. You only have enough strength to walk home, close your eyes, and hope that you can lose yourself in the darkness before the world demands your labor once again. The industrial age has won. It has not only built the world of steel and steam, it has conquered the inner landscape of your dreams. You are no longer a person who sleeps with the seasons. You are a person who sleeps with the whistle. This transition was perhaps the greatest quiet revolution in human history. It happened without a war or a treaty, but it fundamentally altered the chemistry of our brains. We are the descendants of those exhausted workers. We are the ones who still stare at the clock at 3 in the morning, feeling a strange sense of guilt because we are awake when the world tells us we should be silent. We carry the ghost of the second sleep within us, a lingering memory of a time when the night belonged to us, rather than to the factory. As you finally lay your head down and feel the heavy pull of a single, forced slumber, you realize that while the machines have brought us wealth and progress, they have also taken away the quiet, sacred middle of the night. You close your eyes, and for a moment you wonder what it would be like to wake up in a world where time was not a master, but a friend. Then, the darkness takes you, and you sleep the heavy, unbroken sleep of the modern age. You open your eyes. The room is not pitch black, but rather a deep, velvety violet. The fire in the hearth has burned down to a pile of glowing orange jewels, casting long, dancing shadows across the timber beams of the ceiling. You feel a strange sense of clarity. You are not groggy, and you are not exhausted. Instead, you feel a peculiar sort of alertness that is entirely foreign to your modern sensibilities. In your world, waking up at 2 in the morning is a catastrophe. It is the sign of a stressful day ahead or the symptom of a disorder you need to fix with a pill or a weighted blanket. But here, in this medieval room, this moment is a gift. This is the watch. This is the interval. This is the time when the medieval mind is at its most liminal and most creative. You sit up slowly, the straw mattress beneath you rustling like dry autumn leaves. The weight of the heavy wool blankets falls away from your shoulders, and the cool night air hits your skin. In the distance, you hear the muffled sound of a dog barking in a neighboring village, a sound that carries for miles in the absolute silence of a world without engines. There is no hum of a refrigerator. There is no distant drone of a highway. There is only the sound of your own breathing and the soft, rhythmic puffing of your family members sleeping beside you. This is the biphasic rhythm that defined the human experience for millennia. To the medieval person, sleep was not a monolithic block of 8 hours that you either achieved or failed. It was a journey in 2 acts. You have just completed the first sleep, the deep, restorative slumber that took you through the first 4 hours of the night. Now you have entered the watch. For the next hour or 2, you will exist in a state of quiet wakefulness that modern science is only just beginning to understand. You swing your legs over the edge of the bed. Your feet meet the cold, packed earth of the floor, and you reach for a discarded tunic to wrap around your shoulders. You move toward the hearth, taking a small iron poker to stir the embers. A few sparks fly upward, disappearing into the chimney. This time belongs to you. In the medieval world, the day is governed by the sun and the demands of the lord of the manor. The night, however, and specifically this midnight hour, is a private kingdom. Consider what you might do in this space between sleeps. If you were a scholar or a monk, this would be the hour for your most profound reflections. The great doctor of the church, Thomas Aquinas, was said to have done some of his most complex thinking during these silent hours. There is a specific neurobiology at work here. During this gap, the body produces high levels of prolactin, a hormone that induces a state of peace and tranquility. It is the same hormone that animals produce when they are resting in the shade. It creates a bridge between the dream world you just left and the conscious world you are sitting in now. You look around the small room. Perhaps you reach for a piece of bread left over from dinner, chewing slowly. You might pick up a wooden comb and slowly work the tangles out of your hair, a repetitive, meditative motion. If your spouse were awake beside you, this would be the time for the most intimate conversations. In the medieval period, doctors and philosophers often suggested that this was the best time for conception. The body was rested, the mind was calm, and the distractions of the workday were hours away. It was a time for connection that was not rushed by the ticking of a mechanical clock. But for many, this was a time for the spiritual. You might find yourself kneeling on the cold floor, whispering prayers that you have known since childhood. In the darkness, the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world felt thinner. You aren't just reciting words, you are speaking into the void, and for once, the void feels like it is listening. There is a profound sense of safety in this darkness. While the modern world fears the dark and fills it with streetlights and screen glare, the medieval person found a strange sort of sanctuary in it. The darkness was a blanket that hid you from the world. As you sit by the fading embers, you might reflect on how the concept of time itself feels different. You are not counting down the minutes until your alarm goes off. You are simply existing in the present. This is what we have lost in the transition to the industrial age. When the first factories began to rise in the late 18th century, and gas lighting began to push back the borders of the night, the biphasic sleep pattern was under attack. The new world demanded a worker who could operate on a rigid, single block of time. Efficiency became the new god, and the watch was its first sacrifice. By the 19th century, the idea of waking up in the middle of the night began to be pathologized. It became insomnia. We forgot that our ancestors lived this way for thousands of years. We began to view sleep as a commodity to be optimized rather than a natural tide that ebbs and flows. You feel a pang of sympathy for your future self, the version of you that will lie awake in a suburban bedroom, staring at a digital clock with rising panic, wondering why you can't just stay asleep. If only that version of you could step into this medieval room, they would see that there is nothing wrong with being awake. The fire is nearly out now. The air in the cottage has grown colder, and a soft mist is beginning to roll off the fields outside, visible through the small, shuttered window. You feel the first tug of the second sleep pulling at your eyelids. This is the second act of the night. This sleep will be different from the first. It will be lighter, filled with more vivid dreams. This is the time when the mind processes the thoughts you have just had during your quiet watch. You stand up and move back to the bed. You slide under the heavy wool, feeling the residual warmth left by the others. As you settle in, you realize that this rhythm provided a psychological buffer that we no longer possess. The medieval person had time to process their life. They had an hour every single night to just be with themselves, without the pressure of production or the distraction of entertainment. Their minds were not cluttered with the constant noise of a global information network. Their concerns were local, their world was small, and their nights were long. You close your eyes, and the transition is seamless. You are not forcing yourself to sleep. You are simply allowing the natural weight of your body to pull you back under. The second sleep is often where the most creative breakthroughs happen. It is where the metaphors of the day turn into the symbols of the dreamscape. You are reclaiming a part of your humanity that has been polished away by the gears of the modern world. You are stepping back into a biological heritage that dates back to the very dawn of our species. Outside, the world remains silent. The moon hangs high over the thatched roofs of the village, casting a silver glow over the muddy tracks and the silent livestock. In every cottage, people are stirring, whispering, praying, or simply sitting in the dark, enjoying the quiet before the sun demands their labor. They are all part of this grand rhythmic dance of the biphasic mind. As you drift off, you feel a sense of profound peace. You realize that the medieval world, for all its hardships, its diseases, and its physical tolls, had a grasp on the human spirit that we have traded for convenience. They knew how to live with the dark, rather than just waiting for it to end. They knew how to listen to the silence. And most importantly, they knew that the middle of the night was not a time to be feared, but a time to be cherished. The shadows on the wall grow still as the last ember fades to gray ash. The rhythm of your breathing slows, matching the deep, steady pulse of the sleeping house. You are no longer a modern person lost in the past. You are a human being, resting as you were meant to rest, in the cradle of the night. The second sleep takes you now, gentle and sure, carrying you toward the dawn that is still many hours away. And in this sleep, you are finally whole.